What's something people take too lightly but shouldn't? Blood pressure. In the past few years, I've learned that a number of people in my life just walk around day to day, close to stroking out, and don't bother going to the doctor about it. Comment. A few years ago, I started work at a new employer, and the life insurance policy I signed up for required that a nurse come by the office and check my blood pressure and pulse. My blood pressure was so astronomically high, I think it was like 215/130 or something crazy like that the nurse thought her blood pressure cuff was defective and just wrote down a normal rate. A couple of months later, I went to the doctor's office for a physical, and they found me with crazy high BP again. They said normally they would check you into the hospital for such a high BP, but I had no symptoms. I've been on medication ever since. That keeps me normal, but yeah, I was walking around like an overinflated blood balloon ready to stroke out at any moment. Went to the ER a few years back for some antibiotics to treat an infected cat bite on my finger. It wasn't bad and it didn't hurt, but I knew it was infected and I wanted to get something for it before the infection got worse. A nurse took my blood pressure twice before she brought a doctor in to confirm what she was seeing. My blood pressure was 260/113. I'll never forget that. The doctor asked if I'd been having headaches. I couldn't say yes fast enough. I was only 29, I think. I take 2 blood pressure pills every day now, and the last time I went to the doctor, my blood pressure was perfect. Check your blood pressure at home when you're not stressed out inside of a doctor's office. Story 2. Holding friends and family accountable for their words and actions. A lot of people like to think they would act reasonably and morally when their close relationships do terrible things, but they often don't. Usually, they create excuses for the behavior and learn to adapt around it. Comment. If you have to tell your daughter to not wear a short skirt when Uncle Larry comes to visit, you need to stop inviting Uncle Larry. Story 3. Parenting. I can't express enough how much of my adult life has been affected because of how I was raised. Take the time to explain things to your kids. Don't scream at them over small mistakes they make. Don't abuse spanking because you suck at managing your emotions. I could go on and on with this. Comment. Oh yeah, I thought of like 6 more to add as soon as I posted. Hypocrisy is another one. Don't tell your kid not to do something and then you do it. Don't tell your kid not to disrespect you, but then you disrespect them. Exactly this. I cringe when I hear parents screeching at their kids, or worse, the parent towering over them, half bent over to get close, and keep their voice low, quietly threatening them. You are raising adults. They won't be kids forever. How you treat them is how they learn to behave in society, period. Children are a gift, not a burden. Story 4. Work-life balance. No matter where you work, you are replaceable within days. No matter what you do, someone else can do it too. Spend time with your family, friends, and pets. Your job will not be there for you when you are dying, nor will it care that you are gone. Story 5. Seatbelts. I read about this guy who was ejected from his car, which then caught on fire. If he had been wearing his seatbelt, he'd have been killed, so I don't wear one. Yep, 1 in a million accidents. A seatbelt does more harm than good, but to me, this is outweighed by the other 999,999, where it helps. Also, my car has airbags, so I don't need a seatbelt. If you've never had the pleasure of being in a car when the airbag deployed, I suggest you find some videos of people doing silly things like setting a barrel over one in a junkyard and then triggering it with a battery, launching the barrel into orbit. Please believe me when I tell you, an airbag deployment is an incredibly violent thing to happen inside the confined space of a car, and you do not want your face, or any other body parts you prefer not to injure, anywhere near a deploying airbag. Comment. A guy my parents knew didn't believe in seatbelts. He was trying to open a restaurant and drove to New York, 7 hours one way, several times a week for supplies. He was exhausted and overworked, and one day he fell asleep at the wheel on a highway. They pretty much said he probably would have survived if he'd been wearing a seatbelt. Story 6. People take the dangers of glitter way too lightly. That stuff is basically craft herpes. Once you get glitter on you, it spreads everywhere and never fully goes away. You find it on your clothes, in your hair, and somehow even in your food. A single encounter with glitter, and you'll be finding those sparkly specks for years. It's like a sparkly plague that never goes away, and you keep finding between your toes and in other questionable places. Comment. When my sister was about 5 or 6, myself 4 years older, we had a pair of kids twirling batons. Ribbon tassels on the end and a swirly purple liquid glitter suspension in the middle, so when you spun it, it'd look really cool. My sister somehow managed to pop the end off and dumped the whole baton full of a glitter into one eye. I wasn't present for this. I think she was peeking into it and then looked up with it, immediately starts crying to mom and dad. I'm not exaggerating when I say my parents spent 3 hours flushing my sister's eye out. In hindsight, they probably should have taken her to the hospital. But I will always remember my mom holding my sister's eye open while my dad flushed it out. Then them thinking they got it all, only for her to blink and her eye turn an otherworldly purple once more. I'm amazed she didn't get any cuts to her eye, TBH. Between the way her eye looked and her crying while my parents tried to fix her, cemented that as a core memory for me. That and the fact that it just would not stop. I fear glitter. Story 7. Saving money for rainy days or retirement. People are living beyond their means, and they don't even know it. When you factor in the fact that you're going to have to depend on what you saved up, it becomes even clearer. Comment. As an American and a disabled and chronically ill one at that, I'm not even sure how many of us can actually save money, in meaningful amounts anyway. Everything just keeps getting more expensive. Wages barely rise. The federal minimum wage has been $7 and change for the past 15 years. Slowly and surely, I suppose we are pushing towards a better economy than this. But it'll be too little too late for plenty of us. We'll be working until we drop. Or I suppose, working until we're too disabled to keep working and then offing ourselves. Story 8. I notice no one holds doors for the person behind them. People don't let others off of an elevator before they barge in. People don't share the road or let others ahead when driving. So I make it a point to do all these things because it's polite, and I am hoping people will see this and do it as well. But when I do these things, like holding a door open for someone, almost everyone will not say thank you, and some people won't even try to catch the door or even pretend to notice. I've had so many times where the person in front of me slithers out after the person in front of them held the door for them, and they do not catch the door, and I get a door slammed in my face. It's crazy how much people do this. I started loudly saying, welcome to people who don't say thank you, and I only barely heard one person say, oh, thank you. This is in my lifetime BTW. Over 30 years, LOL. Driving, of course, no one waves to say thank you. I do, and I do it so they definitely can see a LOL. They can. I refuse to be an unkind person and not hold doors open or not let others through, not sharing the roads like how I see majority of people doing. It's not in me to do it even once. Do these people who do this think this is what those people are supposed to do for them? Or thanking that person is basic social etiquette, and the gesture shows you appreciate their kindness and acknowledge it. No gesture makes it feel invisible and unappreciated, as if it was some automatic door and that opened itself. It's disrespectful and sad that people don't know what an act of kindness looks like and thinks that's what they're entitled to. I hope I'm not just old LOL and it's getting phased out. I came back on and saw notifications. I thought I was getting in trouble for something LOL. I'm so happy people see this and are thoughtful. It's so nice to know that. Story 9. This is going to be niche, but safety in Western riding rodeo sports, especially with kids. I watched the videos online of 10-year-olds almost being thrown from horses 20 times their weight before doing their barrel racing run, wearing a hat only, and I can't believe this is where we are still at. Concussions and stabs are not taken anywhere seriously enough in these circles, purely for the sake of looking tough. I understand the culture behind the hat, and I understand why some safety precautions aren't practical in a working farm/ranch setting, but this is a sport involving live animals, high speeds, and crazy maneuvers. I grew up riding Western and absolutely loved barrel racing and rodeo, but I saw and experienced far too many concussions, where the immediate treatment was encouragement to get back up on the horse, to show you were okay and not wimpy. My last concussion was with my helmet. There was a rule at our barn, which was a common rule at many other barns, that you only had to wear a helmet if you forgot your hat, and it was mostly to shame you for forgetting or losing your hat. I was thrown and landed headfirst on the ground. Imagine if I had just been wearing my hat. I could understand not forcing adults to wear helmets, since it's their choice, but to put small kids into these sports with absolutely nothing protecting their heads is straight up insanity. Story 10. Dental health. A bad tooth can put you 6 feet under. ETA. It needs to be covered by insurance and considered a human right instead of being considered a cosmetic. Story 11. Perma-locked phones. Samsung at this point doesn't even sell fully unlockable phones in the US anymore. Afaik. No one cares. Because they get a good deal, but they are really getting a 2-year commitment and a phone they never really own. If cars were sold like phones, people would be outraged. It's like buying a car with the hood welded shut that only the dealer can access. Sure, any shop can change the tires, but if you have any other problems, only the dealer has the key, which they will never give out. Edit. When it's sold as an unlocked phone, there should be an asterisk on marketing. They mean SIM unlocked, but the phone is never really fully unlockable. Take your VZW phone to ATT after you paid it off. VZW will still has the key and will dictate the software you run. T-Mo and Sprint have always had good unlock policy. You can thank @ and VZW for this. Samsung was making so many variants for the US that it just made financial sense to consolidate into one locked model instead of having an @VZW. Timo Sprint, generic US model for people who bought outright. Story 12. Condoms. A friend of ours is promiscuous, but she thinks that birth control and being somewhat picky about the guys you sleep with will prevent STIs. She says she only uses them the first few times. I fear for her future. Story 13. Getting a pet. It requires work. That goes without saying. But what nobody talks about is the eventual loss. As I write this, I am looking at our 10-year-old puppy, who is slated to be euthanized later today. They diagnosed him last week and scheduled this appointment. He's not in any pain outwardly, but his demeanor speaks volumes. I broke down at work and left this morning after only a couple hours. He's never been nothing but a good companion, and in my opinion, deserves so much more than he has received. I've lost pets before, of course, but this hurts for some reason like no other. They bring joy, and if you've done your job right, they will bring a boatload of pain. Story 14. Honestly, rapists and child molesters. Yeah, sure, everyone talks about how awful they are, but here in the USA, many are released back into society and reoffend continuously. I've read tons of cases where serial rapists were released only to escalate to murdering their victims. It's more common than you'd think, unfortunately. Also, the victim-blaming mindset. If the offender is charismatic enough or is part of someone's political party, sports team, church leadership, school administration, family, etc., the people who think rape and child molestation is awful will turn and tear apart victims even if there is undeniable physical evidence to prove the accused did the crime. Apparently, all KEX offenders have to do is join and become involved in our close circles, and we'll sit and turn a blind eye to everything they do. Story 15. Using medical or psychiatric diagnosis terms when they're not warranted. Being detail-oriented, in and of itself, is not OCD. Feeling restless or bored or impatient, in and of themselves, is not ADHD. Feeling social different or awkward or uncomfortable, again, is not ASD or autism. People throw around these words, e.g., oh, that picture wasn't hanging straight and I needed to fix it once I noticed. I'm so OCD. Very casually or self-diagnose, often based on one feature of condition, which greatly devalues the proper use of the terms. Story 16. Earning things, delayed gratification. I never learned this as a kid or teen, and now in my 30s having to force myself to put things away or shelf things I want for things I need to do first. Story 17. COVID. For sure, it's not just the flu or a cold, people. It's not even just a respiratory disease. It can damage your heart, brain, kidneys, arteries, and more. And every time you get it, even if you're asymptomatic, your risk for long COVID or just cumulative damage to your vital organs goes up. And the fun part is it's causing literal brain damage. So, the longer we wait to address it, the less mentally agile we'll be as a country to design and implement countermeasures. Story 18. The responsibility to be an active participant in a democratic society. Paying attention to politics, voting, educating yourself on important social issues. It all matters, and matters to a much higher degree than people credit. Part of the reason we are in the current state we are in is exactly because we, the people, have not done our duty to remain vigilant, informed, and involved in the political processes and happenings. It is the common fate of the indolent to see their rights become prey to the active. The condition upon which God hath given liberty to man is eternal vigilance, which condition if he break, servitude is at once the consequence of his crime and the punishment of his guilt. Philpott Curran. Story 19. Y'all won't like this, but religion. As a Christian, it is sickening to see so many of my fellow Christ followers treat others. Even if you disagree with the way someone is living, keep your opinion to yourself and love on them like you would anyone. We're all broken and nobody is perfect. So unless you're attempting to help someone in good faith, your judgment only serves to harm others. Story 20. Driving. Because they do it every day. People get so used to driving multi-ton behemoths of steel at literal breakneck speeds. It's insane. You're literally riding a quasi-constant explosion that propels a few tons of metal forward. The least you could do is pay attention. But people do all sorts of B's when driving, when a single moment of distraction can cause millions of dollars of damages from crashes, emergency services, missed revenue, missed work. And that's not even mentioning the human tragedy of persons losing their lives because someone thought some meme was more important than paying attention, or that they're totally fine to drive drunk. Story 21. Joking insults. I let myself be insulted because they were all jokes, and he didn't mean any of them. A while later, I found out he was a manipulative bastard who was subtly doing everything he could to emotionally abuse and manipulate me while pretending to be my friend and making me feel like I was going crazy. He knew I'd take the jokes seriously and be insulted, but then feel guilty and not be able to be angry at him because they were just jokes. And so I'd keep falling for it. Joking insults aren't always jokes. Story 22. Posture sitting. Sitting is going to be the next sig killer because of health issues. And posture is already doing it, as so many issues are due to bad posture, bad wrist, prob posture, or sitting, headache at the back of your neck, posture, trouble breathing, chest tightness. Try to adjust your posture. I bet a good chance it goes away. Fun fact, this can cause anxiety. It's insane how we've just accepted text neck, hunching, rolled shoulders, and other stuff as normal. Story 23. It astonishes me how casually so many take operating a machine capable of causing a great deal of harm. As an avid motorcyclist, the amount of inattentive drivers is absolutely horrible. I've ridden far and wide here in the great US of get off your phones people. I'm especially looking at y'all with kids in the car and you're on your device going 75 mph comment. I work in insurance. I lose faith in humanity seeing the people do and the lives they just destroy because they aren't paying attention. I live on a busy residential corner and same. People drive so fast down the one road. A busy road. There aren't stop signs for several blocks, so people just speed through. Meanwhile, it's just houses, and there's some schools nearby too, so we have lots of kids, people's pets, and wildlife, lots of deer that wander around. They also take the corner I live on really fast, which frustrates me because of those reasons above as well as the fact that it's dangerous for me to back out of my own driveway because maybe some asshole will take the turn really fast and not be able to control their vehicle if I've already started to back out. My cat gets out sometimes too, and I fear for her safety. There's also nothing between the sidewalk and the road here. I grew up in a place where there was a strip of grass and a solid curb separating the sidewalk and road, but here, sidewalk ends and the curb has a slope to it, so it's a lot easier for a car to drive up onto it. And I live in Canada, so it gets icy and slippery on top of all that, but people just do not care. This is my biggest gripe. People are operating these huge killing machines and don't take it seriously at all, and drive so recklessly. Story 24. Space debris around our planet. There is a finite amount of space that is usable by satellites, and more junk is floating around up there. We could reach a point known as the Kessler syndrome, where the orbital space for satellites is like a continuous shotgun blast of debris, making all satellites dead, and even space launches impossible. Say goodbye to internet if that happens. There are 100 million bits of debris over 1 millimeter flying around the planet at 17,000 Hammersmutes. Story 25. Freedom. I was incarcerated for almost 2 years, and at the first jail, the windows were frosted so we could only see if it was day or night. We couldn't see anything. The next jail, the windows were see-through like normal windows, and I would just marvel at how beautiful the trees were and watching people get on and off the bus. Now that I'm free, I don't take the small things in life for granted, like my freedom to exist. Story 26. Fertility. When you are very young, it's always, don't get preggo. This will be the end of your life. Think about education, career, etc. And then when you hit 30, it turns 180. You don't have time. Get preggo now. It may be risky, it will take too long, and etc. You need to be healthy all your life, not just for this. And you need to get your info and go to a specialist for your reproductive health early on, like 22, 23, 25 yo-ish. Story 27. Diet. I worked construction for most of my life, and if you know anything about blue-collar jobs, everyone pretty much survives on gas station fast food and Monsters sodas, and I was no different until this past year, when I had to start budging money better for a family reasons. Started cutting out fast food and sugary drinks, because that was an unnecessary expense every day, and within 2 weeks, felt so much better with much more energy throughout the day. Story 28. Teeth issues. I had a root canal, but never got the crown cause of money. The tooth deteriorated and opened the door to the sinus wall beneath it to be punctured if something sharp enough got lodged up there. Basically, my doc told me if I kept the tooth in, I could very likely develop fatal heart problems. I was too scared to ask much more than that, but yeah, fix your teeth, people. Story 29. Sugar. The amount of damn sugar we ingest. Having a sweet tooth is fun and games, until you're diagnosed with diabetes, and alcohol contains a lot of sugar. So being an alcoholic is gonna bite you in the ass. My dad drinks almost every day, since I've known him my whole life, and always drinks Heinekens. He was diagnosed with diabetes and still insists on drinking. Y'all will lose your limbs if you don't control your diabetes. Story 30. dating women with the promise of marrying them in the future, but you don't. You just sleep with them and hang around with them and leech out of them. Then, after you get your fun, you dump them like a rusty rug, and then brag about it with friends and on social media that you're the coolest womanizer ever. If that's not inhumane, I don't know what is. Story 31. Freshwater loss. Whole lakes are being drained and rivers diverted completely so they never reach the ocean. We're generally treating natural freshwater like it's an unlimited resource, and it's not. Story 32. Politics. I mean, I get that people will always have differing opinions, but when you're talking about making decisions for the group as a whole, you really should be involved. Otherwise, you might end up being responsible for something you had no say over. If nothing else, you don't want those group decisions being left in the hands of whatever asshole has the time and pompousness to raise a stink over bull's mitt. Story 33. That your access to healthcare is heavily dependent on who you work for, not just in how much money you earn, but certain insurances allow for more testing and better treatments than others do without extreme costs. Quitting your job could literally mean risking your life. Story 34. Swimming. People really don't have a healthy respect for water and how quickly it can kill you if something goes wrong, especially moving water. Rivers and oceans have no mercy and will exhaust you and drag you under, even if you're a really good swimmer. Don't take any chances with water. Always wear a life vest, even if it's just a fishing trip out on the lake or something. Story 35. Subscription service models for existing items. Think the BMW heated seat shenanigans and things like ceiling fans or other devices that require an app to function. Battle passes, pre-order bonuses, always online requirements for anything. Story 36. Intentions. Most of the times, we don't know why we do what we do. All we know is we want to. Developing mindfulness allows to take a closer look and know yourself better. You might not be the person you think you are. Story 37. Kex. I'll never understand how people can get naked, be vulnerable, bump uglies, and risk Stad's pregnancy with total strangers just to bust a nut like I rather masturbate and wait for someone who actually cares about me. Like some people really take disease and 8 tinctures of child support to lightly. Story 38. Kex. Young people especially. The repercussions of pretending it means nothing are drastic. Everything from being tied to someone you hate by a child, regretting an abortion years or moments later, destroying your or someone else's self-respect or sense of self-worth, your reputation. Theirs, the list goes on. Theirs. Story 39. Casual drinking turns into problematic drinking really easily if you're not paying attention, especially with how social drinks-focused American society, I can't speak for other cultures, is. Story 40. Cheating, lying, betrayal. People are way too comfortable with being pricks and not getting punished for it. We kind of just accept that it happens, but never properly scorn those who think it's not a big deal and laugh about it. Story 41. PP in general. Gloves, eye protection, and hearing protection. The older I get, the more I see the old guys getting surgery on their hands, losing sight, and unable to hear anything. Wish I wouldn't have been so dumb at a younger age. Story 42. You know how people jokingly talk schmidt to their friends? I had a few friends say some pretty schmitty things to me recently and it hurt a lot. Luckily, they're online friends, so it's not like I am forced to deal with them in person. Story 43. Sunscreen lotion. My own family makes fun of it. Meanwhile, my in-laws are having chunks of skin cut off their faces every year. Also, I put it on regularly, and I'm still the most tan of all of us. Everyone thinks they are invincible. Story 44. I work in the oil field and people take poison gases too lightly. Me and some of my coworkers had to go to a hospital because we didn't care to check for leaking or damaged pipes. Story 45. Riding around on e-scooters without a helmet. This message is especially important for the adults out there with their kids riding with them. You all gonna get hurt real bad. Story 46. Privacy. There's a difference between privacy and secrecy. What Facebook does with your data should be important to you. You should stop giving them more of it. Story 47. Staying hydrated, I cannot express how often I'll have an aching headache and exhaustion, and then realized I've only had maybe a sip of water that day. Story 48. The ability to admit that you don't know something. As long as you're still breathing, you can learn, or perhaps find someone who can assist.